I am making a Red Dragon Archfiend deck profile since the structure decks were just released. And I honestly really love playing the deck. I was playing pure Red Dragon Archfiend at my locals recently, and I really didn't know how the new cards were supposed to work with the older ones. But I ended up going 2-2, where I won against Cyber Dragon and Pure Runic, but I lost against Sprite Runic, the Live Twin, and the Punk Kashtira before Arise Heart got hit. But overall, I really like the deck, so I figured I'd go ahead and make a deck profile. And then this is a different version from what I was playing, as this one is technically considered much better. But starting off with the monsters, surprisingly, it was not reprinted in the structure deck, which I thought was odd. But I play one copy of Chain Resonator. Chain Resonator has the effect that if it's normal summoned while you control a synchro monster, or my bad, if it's normal summoned while a synchro monster is on the field, you can special summon another Resonator from your deck, which this effect actually works if your opponent controls a synchro, which I think is hilarious. Then I play two copies of Synchron Resonator. Synchron Resonator can be special summoned just by a synchro monster being in play. And then you can only special summon it once per turn this way. And then if it's sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, I believe. My bad. If it's sent from the field to the grave, you can target one Resonator monster in your graveyard other than Synchron Resonator and add it back to your hand. And you can only use that effect of Synchron Resonator once per turn, I believe. Actually, no. That effect of Synchron Resonator is not once. Because as many times as you want. So that's just another way of being able to recur some of your Resonators from grave. Next, I play two copies of Vision Resonator. Vision Resonator is a freeze. Oh crap. Vision Resonator is a free summon just by having a level 5 or higher dark monster on the field. And then if it's sent to the graveyard, then you can add a spell or trap from your deck to your hand that specifically mentions Red Dragon Archfiend. And you can only use each effect of Vision Resonator once per turn. Which, this is mainly summoned off the effect of one of the other Resonators, which I will get to later. But for the other one of Resonators, I play one copy of Creation Resonator, one Crimson Resonator, and one Red Resonator. Creation Resonator can be special summoned from your hand as long as you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster. Crimson Resonator has the effect that when it is summoned, if the only other monster you control is a Dark Dragon synchro monster, then you can special summon up to 2 Resonators with different names. You can summon 2 Resonators from your deck, as long as they aren't Crimson Resonator. And if you use the effect of Crimson Resonator, then you can't summon from the extra deck except for Dark Dragon Synchros, which is fine because this deck's entire extra deck is Dark Dragon Synchros. And then Red Resonator has the effect that when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand. And then if Red Resonator is special summoned, you can target one monster on the field, gain life points equal to its attack points, and you can only use each effect of Red Resonator once per turn. And then finally, for the Resonators, I play 3 copies of Soul Resonator. Soul Resonator is the main Resonator you want to be summoning, as Soul Resonator has the effect that when it is normal or special summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Fiend monster from your deck. And then, while you control a Red Dragon Archfiend, if a card or cards on your field be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. Which, I really like that effect. The only thing that makes me kind of sad is that if you remove it from play, you can't really return it back to your hand off of things like Synchron Resonator, so you can be guaranteed to have synchro plays for the next turn. But I do like that it has the E-grade effect of protection. Then next, I play 3 copies of Bone Archfiend. Bone Archfiend has the effect that you can only use each of its effects once per turn, which once per turn you can target 1 monster on your field, send a Fiend Tuner with 1500 or less attack. Make sure I have that right. Okay, now you can send a Fiend Tuner from your deck to the graveyard to then be able to increase or decrease the targeted monster's level by 1. However, if you use this effect, you're locked into Dark Dragon Synchros. And you can send, once per turn, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to then special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. Make sure I'm reading this right. Yeah, I do. And then if you summon Bone Archfiend this way, you can't summon from the extra deck unless it's Dark Dragon Synchro. And then that is it for the quote Red Dragon Archfiend monsters. Now for the supporting monsters, I play 1 copy of Bestial Magnemite. Bestial Magnemite can target a light or dark monster in either, or all of the bestials except the last 2 that I'm using can summon themselves by targeting a light or dark monster in either player's graveyard. Banish that target, and if you do, summon this monster. And they each have their own unique effects, whereas Magnemite is able to activate its effect so that during the end phase, you can add a dragon from your deck to your hand. And the other thing is they can banish a light or dark to summon themselves from your hand. It is also a quick effect if your opponent controls at least 1 monster. Then I play 2 copies of Bestial Baldrake. Baldrake is able to have the effect that if your opponent special summons, let's see, what's it, a monster from the extra deck. Okay, your opponent special summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster. You contribute 1 other light or dark monster you control to then target 1 of those special summoned monsters and banish it. I just like Baldrake because of it actually being an interruption. And then next, I also play 3 copies of Bestial Druisworm. Druisworm has the effect that if it is sent from field to grave, you can target 1 special summon monster on the field and send it to the graveyard. Which, honestly, Druisworm is my favorite of the bestials. Just because of how you're able to bring it back with things like Brand Regained, tribute it with cards like Branded Beast, and then be able to just trigger its effect multiple times. Which, honestly, that's the reason I like Bestial Druisworm so much. Then next, I play 3 copies of Bestial Serenir. Serenir has the effect that if it is sent from field to grave, of course I believe that's how it was triggered. My bad. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send a branded continuous spell or trap. Or continuous spell trap. You can send a branded spell or trap or a bestial monster from your deck to the graveyard. And you can only use that effect of Serenir once per turn. That's the other thing I forgot to mention, is all the bestials are hard once per turns with their effects. Then next, I play 3 copies of the Bestial Lubellion. The Bestial Lubellion lets you discard it to then be able to add a bestial monster from your deck to your hand, except for the Bestial Lubellion. Make sure I have that right, because I actually haven't really... Okay. And then you can special summon this card from your graveyard, or hand, I believe. You can special summon from your hand or grave by attributing a level 6 or higher dragon. And then once per turn, you can activate its effect to take a continuous branded spell or trap from your deck and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. Which, I like that effect because sometimes your opponent will have cards like you cannot activate your opponent can't activate spells or traps, and this is able to just place it face up on the field so it can get around the can't be activated. And then finally, for the bestials, I play my plan B of the Bestial Albalos. The Bestial Albalos cannot be normal summoned or set, just like the Bestial Lubellion. And it must first be special, or is it must first? He must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by attributing to bestial monsters. And then while it's on the field, it negates the effects of all fusion, synchro, XZs, link, and ritual monsters. I think it hits ritual too. Yep. And if this card on the field, if this card on the field leaves, bleh, if this card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can then activate its effect to then be able to banish all face down cards in the extra deck face up until your opponent's end phase. So it can. I also like it because if your opponent doesn't realize they can do that, then they'll just try to destroy it before they summon more of the monsters they can negate, and then they'll lose their entire extra deck until their end phase. And to finish off the monsters, I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just because it is technically the best hand trap. Being able to stop your opponent from adding cards from deck to hand, summoning from deck, or sending cards from deck to grave. Then for the spells, I play the 1 copy of Branded Regained. Branded Regained has the effect that once per turn, if a light or dark monster is banished, then you can put that monster at the bottom of the deck and then draw 1 card. So basically what you can do with that is you can banish if your opponent has a light monster in grave, or light or dark, and you can banish it with a bestial, summon the bestial, and then you can put that card at the bottom of your opponent's deck and draw 1 card, or you can do it with your own resources. And then it has another effect where if your opponent would normal or special summon 1 monster, you can special summon a bestial monster from your hand or graveyard. Which I honestly like that one because, again, my favorite monster to summon off that effect is Bestial Druid Worm. Because if you use it with one of the traps, then you're able to just be able to clear 2 monsters. And then you're only able to use each effect of Branded Regained once per turn. And I feel like if Branded Regained was not once per turn with either of its effects, it probably would have been hit on the ban list a while ago. Then next for the spells, I play 3 copies of Crimson Gaia. Crimson Gaia has the effect that during the main phase, you can add a red dragon archfiend or a monster that mentioned monster. My mouth was not going to work. You can add a red dragon archfiend or a monster or a card that mentions red dragon archfiend from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And then if a red dragon archfiend monster you control attacks, you can switch all monsters your opponent controls to defense position. And then if a card or cards on the field are destroyed, you can special summon a red dragon archfiend from your graveyard. Make sure that's... You can only use each of the effects of Crimson Gaia once per turn. My favorite thing with the Crimson Gaia is that most people don't really realize it has those other 2 effects. And in one of my games, I was actually able to monopolize on them as my opponent had summoned a bunch of monsters in attack mode. I believe this was Cyber Dragon. I was summoned Red Dragon Archfiend, had it attack. Crimson Gaia was able to switch all of their monsters to defense position. And Red Dragon Archfiend was able to just destroy all of their monsters because it's Red Dragon Archfiend. And then because cards were destroyed, I could summon back a Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend from my graveyard. And then they got punched in the face for game. It was hilarious. And then finally for the spells, I play 3 copies of Resonator Call. Resonator Call just lets you add a Resonator from deck to hand, so this lets you search for... This basically lets you add your Soul Resonator. And the other fun thing of this card is that it's not once per turn. So if you have multiples, you can activate multiples to get multiple Resonators into your hand. And then for the traps, I play 1 copy of Red Zone. Red Zone has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Red Dragon Archfiend or a synchro that mentions Red Dragon Archfiend, you can target 1 card in the field and destroy it. And then once per turn, you can target one of your banished Dragon Synchro monsters, summon it back to your field. Which, that is actually really funny considering one of the monsters in this deck actually banishes itself to punish your opponent. Then I play 1 copy of Etude of the Branded. A toot of the branded this has the effect that during either player's turn, you can activate its effect so that immediately after the effect resolves, you can synchro summon using monsters on your field to synchro summon, as long as one of the materials is a dragon. Which 9 times out of 10, your synchro summons will require or be using a dragon. Literally the only exception in my testing has been Soul Resonator tuning with Bone Archfiend. And then this has another effect, I don't remember what it is. Okay, and then it has the secondary effect of being able to, or while you control a bestial, any monster that be sent to your opponent's graveyard for a fusion, synchro, ritual, link. I don't think this mentions XEs. Yeah, any monster that be tributed for a ritual summon or used as material for fusion, synchro, or link is removed from play instead. So that's one thing I like about this, as it is able to mess with decks like Punk or Branded, which I think is hilarious, as it's just able to banish any of those. But the main thing, though, is that it lets you synchro summon, so that you can do a very, very nasty thing to your opponent. And for the last of the branded cards, I'm playing one copy of Branded Beast. Branded Beast has the effect that once per turn during the main phase, as long as you control a bestial, you contribute one dragon monster, then target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. And then once per turn during your end phase, you can target a continuous branded spell or trap in your graveyard and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. And you can only use each effect of Branded Beast once per turn. And finally, for the traps, I play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence is activate from your hand while you control no cards, or no face. Let's see, I believe it's no face-up cards, actually. Okay, no, you have to control no cards. But let's just let you target an effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects. And then if it was activated from field, then it will also negate all the spells and traps in its column. Which, if you do it on your turn, remember which column it was, because it will negate yours as well. And that is it for the main deck. I believe the main deck is either 42 or 43. So if you want to cut it down to 40, then using this exact list, then you can just take out the Bestial Alba Loss and a single Synchron Resonator. Or if you'd rather, you could also take out the one Creation Resonator. For the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Red Rising Dragon. Red Rising Dragon has the effect that when it's synchro summoned, you can target one Resonator in your graveyard, special summon it, and then you can banish this card from your graveyard to then target 2 level 1 tuners in your grave. I believe that's the only thing. Okay, target 2 level 1 Resonators in grave and summon them. And I believe, as long as I remember correctly. Yeah, the best part I like about this card is that none of its effects are once per turn. So, as long as you have 2 level 1 synchros, you can just banish 3 of these from grave. Or you can synchro summon this 3 times and just keep synchro climbing, which I think is hilarious. Then next, I play 1 copy of Red Dragon Archfiend. Red Dragon Archfiend has the effect that if it attacks a defense position monster, then at the end of the damage step, it destroys all defense monsters your opponent controls, which is why Crimson Gaia switches everything to defense. And the only downside of Red Dragon Archfiend is that during the end phase, any of your monsters that did not attack are destroyed. Then I play 1 copy of Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend. Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend has the effect of its name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. If this card is sent from the from the monster zone to the graveyard, Then you can special summon a Red Dragon Archfiend from your extra deck, treating it as a synchro summon. And then if it was sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can then destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. And you can only use each effect of Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend once per turn. This card is basically a stepping stone that lets you synchro climb a lot faster when using Red Rising Dragon. And I'll show a little combo at the very end to show what I mean by that. But I just like Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend because it lets you synchro climb if you're going first, or lets you put a bit of tension or stress by destroying all your opponent's attack position monsters. And then next I play 3 copies of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. Scarlet I still think is the main Red Dragon Archfiend of the deck, as Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend has the effect that its name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while it's on the field or in the graveyard. And then once per turn you can activate its effect to destroy as many special summoned effect monsters on the field as possible besides itself that are weak, just as strong or weaker than it. So normally it'll be 3,000 or less, but depending on what your opponent has in play, it could be weaker. And then the final part of that effect is that it then inflicts 500 damage to your opponent for each monster that was destroyed. And that effect is a soft once per turn, so if you have multiples in play, you can use that effect multiple times a turn. Or if you summon it, get rid of it, and then you can bring it back, you can use it again. Next, I play 2 copies of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Abyss has the effect that quick effect, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, negates effects till the end of the turn. And then if Abyss inflicts battle damage to your opponent, then you can target one Resonator in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. And you can only use this effect of Abyss once per turn. So that's the only downside of this card, is that if you have 2 in play, you can only use this effect once. But I like having 2 just because Unicorn, or cards like Kishira Unicorn are a card, and I would like to always have a second one as long as it's an actual option. Next, I play 1 copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane. Bane has the effect of once per turn you contribute one monster you control to then target a Red Dragon Archfiend monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. And then if Bane inflicts battle damage to your opponent, then you can special summon 2 tuners, as I believe they can be tuners. You can special summon 2 tuner monsters, one from deck and one from grave, as long as they have the same level. And you can only use each effect of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane once per turn. Then I also play 1 copy of Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend, which was another card that I noticed wasn't reprinted in the structure deck, which I thought was kind of odd. But Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend has the effect that once per turn, it can destroy every other card on the field. And then if your opponent would activate a trap, or I believe it's only a trap. Let's see, during your player's battle phase. Okay. And its other effect is, during either player's battle phase, if your opponent would activate a spell or trap card, you can negate the card activated, and if you do, or negate it, destroy it, and then Tyrant gains 500 attack points. This card, its main purpose is just to be able to nuke the board. And then the only other downside of this card is that it has to be synchro summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. Then to finish off the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Bestial Dissipator, 1 copy of Red Supernova Dragon, which is the main boss monster of the deck, and 1 copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. But Bestial Dissipator has the effect that once per turn you can target a banished light or dark monster and summon it to your field, which you can actually summon your opponent's banished monsters. And then if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can target a banished card and shuffle it back into the deck. And then if it was your card, you destroy that monster. If it was your opponent's, you negate that monster's effect. And you can only use each effect of Bestial Dissipator once per turn. And then Red Supernova Dragon has the effect that it cannot be destroyed by card effects. It gains 500 attack for every tuner in your graveyard. And if your opponent activates a monster effect or attacks, you can banish this card until your next end phase, to then be able to banish all cards your opponent controls. Which, this is the funny card for Red Zone, as you can banish Red Supernova to banish your opponent's entire board. Then you can use Red Zone to then be able to summon back your Red Supernova Dragon. And the fun thing about Red Supernova is that its effect to banish is not once per turn. So you can technically use Red Supernova twice per turn. And I am also trying to work on fitting in Assault Synchron into the deck, so that you could technically use Red Supernova 3 times if needed. As Assault Synchron lets you banish it from your graveyard when a Dragon Synchro monster is banished or attributed, to then summon it back to the field. And then finally, Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity has the effect that when it is synchro summoned, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the turn. Which, that probably tells you where this card was going with Etude of the Branded. As you are able to summon this card during your opponent's turn, stop them from using cards or effects for that turn, and then just proceed to watch them cry because they can't do anything about it. And then King Calamity also has the effect that if it destroys a monster in battle, your opponent takes damage equal to that monster's original attack. And if King Calamity is destroyed, you can target a Dark Dragon Synchro monster in your graveyard and special summon it to your field. And that is it for the extra deck. Moving on to the side deck, because I want to get people's actual opinions on the side deck. For the side deck, I play 3 copies of Droll Lockbird. This is just mainly used just to hit combo decks, as if your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, except by their draw phase. Then you can discard this card to then be able to prevent your opponent from adding cards from their deck to their hand for the rest of the turn, which I also think is great. Then I play 2 copies of Ghostbell and Haunted Mansion. This is mainly just used so that you can stop your opponent from moving cards from the graveyard, so like returning to deck, banishing from grave, or summoning from grave. Ironically, it's also decent against Bestials. Then I play 1 copy of Scarlet Security. This card is a searchable Harpy's Feather Duster, thanks to Crimson Gaia, which all you have to do to activate it is control a Red Dragon Archfiend. Then I play 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, just because, as far as I can tell, this deck does not like back row. Then I play 2 copies of Lightning Storm. Again, this deck does not like back row. Then 3 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. I mainly cite this one just because there are 2 people at my locals, or potentially 3, that are playing Runic. So having Anti-Spell is definitely a great card for that deck. And then finally, for my side, I also play 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, as depending on what you're facing, Dimensional Barrier will buy you at least another turn. As you can activate it, call Pendulum, Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz, and monsters of the declared type cannot be summoned, nor can their effects be activated. And that is for the rest of the turn. Now I will go ahead and move on to the quote combo that I was talking about, which you can get to off of just Resonator Call, Crimson Gaia, or by opening Soul Resonator. And all this is one of those 3 cards plus any card. As you can activate one of those or the other 2 to get to your copy of Soul Resonator. Summon the Soul Resonator. Soul Resonator's effect will activate, allowing you to summon a level 4 lower Fiend from deck, or level 4 lower Dark Fiend, so you summon Bone Archfiend. And then you can activate Bone Archfiend's effect, letting you send a Fiend Tuner from deck to grave. which, where are you? Most of the time you want to be Crimson Resonator. And then you decrease, you either decrease Bone Archfiend's level by 1, or your Soul Resonator by 1. You want their levels to equal 6, that's what I'm getting at. Then you tune Soul Resonator with Bone Archfiend to then be able to summon your Red Rising Dragon. Red Rising Dragon's effect activates, targeting your Crimson Resonator, summon the Crimson, and then Crimson Resonator's effect will activate, letting you summon 2 more Resonators from the deck, which you can choose Red Resonator and Vision Resonator if you want to do level 8 and 10 plays, or you can tune them all for Red Supernova Dragon, or you can, instead of summoning Red Resonator, you could summon one of the level 1s like Synchron Resonator to then be able to make your Hot Red Giant Archfiend Abyss and return Vision Resonator from grave to hand, which then tuning with Vision Resonator will let you grab another spell trap that mentions Red Dragon Archfiend. Which that's pretty much the main combos. From there you can just do whatever you want, like you can summon Red Dragon Archfiend, then Bane bring back Red Dragon Archfiend, or summon a Red Dragon Archfiend from extra deck by using Scarred Red Dragon Archfiend, or Scarred Dragon, and then have a Bane and Abyss, and then you can bring back Red Dragon Archfiend. And then it's pretty much just a lot of things you can do. But like I said, the main thing I've noticed though is that if Red Rising Dragon or Soul Resonator get negated, usually the Red Dragon Archfiend stuff isn't doing anything. But that is it for the deck profile. If you have ideas what I can do to improve the deck, and ideas that decks like to see made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, which I am still working on helping one of my friends build his Stardust Dragon deck so that we can do a Stardust versus Red Dragon Archfiend game. But like I said, if you like to see any decks like that you want to see face each other, any improvements or decks like to be made, feel free to comment down below. Thank you for watching.